You had wanted to talk about one topic you did mention was the TikTok case.
Can you please explain to people why banning TikTok is not a violation of the First Amendment and why it is not anti-free speech principle to say that we should not allow this company to operate this weaponized app in our country
Well, that's a
under
funny.
the ownership of our not real enemy slash frenemy.
It's funny that
Have you
you're
tried?
asking me to explain it when I think I was the skeptic. Remember when we were both on laid back law?
Yes.
And you were very strong on this, and I think I had a little bit more of a problem with it. So why don't you explain why it's so clear to you that there's no constitutional problem with this? And then I'll see what I can do to nibble away at it.
My issue, and I think that the arguments that have been posed are very fair, which is we are not trying to ban the speech that is being propagated on TikTok. Rather, we are banning an algorithm and an entire app that is designed to spy on Americans, devalue American values, including trying to demoralize our population, spying on our population everywhere they go, everything they type, everything they do, and algorithmically damaging the United States morale. Now, that is very different than trying to censor speech. We're not saying that you can't believe that the United States is evil or racist or that you can't say these things. You can say those things on any other platform, but a platform and an algorithm and an app that is designed as a weapon against the United States people, that is designed to demoralize the people, and that is owned and operated by a foreign entity, which we can only hold accountable either one of two ways: banning and kicking out, or going to war over. There is no practical way to hold them legally accountable when they violate the law, because it's not a question of if, it's when they will violate US law. What are the consequences here? What can we actually do to hold them accountable? The answer is nothing. So there's a big difference between local ownership or ownership by a citizen, or having some nexus and having the headquarters of a company here in the United States being able to hold the people who make the decisions for the company, for that algorithm, for that app, for that weapon here in the United States accountable, versus foreign entities that are utilizing this algorithm app to spy on our own national citizens here in the United States. So for me, these are two distinct differences. I have issues with banning RT News from coming into the United States. That's different. RT News, you don't have to download an app in order to listen to its messages. You should absolutely have access to RT News, to propaganda overseas. I have no problem with propaganda coming into the United States. My problem is when you are utilizing an app to spy on our citizens, to demoralize our citizens, where you have targeted the algorithm specifically to do those things, to become highly addictive, and there is no measure of transparency or accountability against the company.
I think that those are very compelling points. Here, I think is the counterpoint. What we're outlawing here is a mode of communication, and it's not merely a technology. It is a platform for the exchange of images, ideas, and again, content. It is, as far as I know, unprecedented in terms of, I mean, I'm sure we do know that there are technology limitations that are applied to all kinds of things. But the idea of a technology that is used by the public to communicate with other members of the public, even though there's an admixture in there of manipulation and foreign interests that are trying to subvert us, that's been true of every form of the press, certainly in the 20th century. I mean, communists have run all kinds of newspapers for the longest time. Why should we be allowed to read the Daily Worker? I think I'll say this much. A lot of First Amendment lawyers that I know are comfortable with your position. I just have a real question about how okay, it's not and. Also, I have a question of how you enforce the illegality of the software. I guess what you can say is the
Sure.
company can't operate in the US and it's illegal to make the software available. Doesn't that sound kind of creepy? This is illegal software. Well, there are such things as illegal software,
Mhm.
obviously. I mean, hell, if Hollywood decides that something is a copyright risk, they can get Congress to outlaw almost anything. So there's lots of really good, juicy issues here. And I don't think the Supreme Court really should be making this decision. These are policy decisions. These are absolutely policy decisions. And it looks like Congress has, to a large extent, made them. But I think it's going to be a very lively argument.
So
and I just want to point out
yeah,
that we have a super chat here from Jackals of Terra Argentum.
I'm glad that you've read. I'm glad you read that slowly because I always mispronounce his name. I shouldn't, but I do.
Agreeing with you that the notion that foreign entities should be entitled to American constitutional rights has always been absurd to me. The alien has no business being shielded by laws. That's a different topic. Because the problem with that, I mean, as a general principle, I may as well, while I'm doing these, okay, we might have not given Eileen her full.
I love you too, Eileen.
Okay, and I also want to thank John for the anniversary wishes. And now I want to hide it. That's what I want to do. Hide. Okay. What was I saying?
You were saying that the question as to whether or not the Constitution extends its rights and protections to foreign entities is a different discussion. I don't think it is because I believe that is actually one of the arguments that is raised in the briefs that went up to the Supreme Court, which is foreign entities do have certain rights. Foreign individuals do have certain rights under the Constitution. Those rights, though, are very, very limited. And it's basically limited to due process rights, not to all the other rights that would protect a U.S. citizen.
Right, but it doesn't really answer our question because it would be very easy to establish a domestic entity that would act in every manner exactly the same way. And at what point do we say, this kind of goes back to your RT. At what point do we say you're not really an American company because you're really being controlled? You might make rules, but then you're drawing bright lines that might be rather arbitrary. I'm not just saying it's not a legitimate point, but I don't think it's going to be the basis on which an important precedent is going to be established.
So, Ron, let's play this out here really quickly. Let's say that Congress passes a law that says, regardless of the speech that you agree with, if you receive campaign donations or campaign funds in order to run a certain campaign ad, you must treat all political candidates equally. You cannot shadow ban them. Okay. And if you run ads for free, they must be neutral and unbiased. And if they do favor one talent or one candidate over another, you must provide equal airtime. We know Congress has done this and they're able to enforce it in terms of television and newspapers, specifically newspapers and news media. The question is, how do you do that against a foreign entity, specifically someone who is a frenemy? So that's my question. And that's the issue right there.
Well, I'll tell you something that I think would be also valuable. We often see people on social media talking about treason. And
that escalated quickly.
Well, here's my point. I'm always reminding people that treason only applies in times of war. It's defined in the Constitution as giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
And to the loser.
I'm sorry?
And to the loser of the war. The winner of the war is never treasonous.
All right. Well, guess what?
But anyway, continue. Sorry.
Danny has used the term frenemy several times here, and it's well chosen. What do you do about countries that you are either in a proxy war with? I mean, during the Korean War, American and Chinese troops, pilots, were engaged in dogfights with each other. What do you do? But there's no state of declared war between the United States and China. Does that mean that there could be no treason if someone were to, give aid and comfort to what we used to call Red China? It might be a useful thing for us to take another look at the question of how we evaluate relationships with countries. Does it have to, is there just all the countries in the world, or countries who are all in the same pot versus countries we're at war with?
I'm so glad you asked that question, which goes directly to ITAR. And this is where I think it was me and Uncivil Law who agreed that this should squarely fall under an ITAR regulation. If it is deemed to be a particular weapon, well, then the answer is very simple. And the answer is this. ITAR regulations, it's the, International Trade Arms Regulations? Yes. So basically what in the ITAR, it specifies that certain foreign enemies or certain states are not allowed to participate in the creation of weapons, They're not allowed to have software related to weapons. They're not even allowed to have old, redone hardware related to weapons. We're not allowed to do or sell or play at all with certain entities, and it is determined by a small select group within the State Department. They are answerable. They answer to Congress and to the president. Okay. That group of countries that we are not allowed to sell to, play with, engage with changes periodically, as our relationships change with these countries, as you can imagine. And oftentimes, a lot of companies will get around ITAR regulations by selling or trading with our friendly neighbors, who then trade and then resell to our not so friendly frenemies. So while we don't have direct control over where the proceeds, funds, where our software, where our hardware goes to in terms of international arms trade specifically, we at least have some control over where those things go. And wouldn't you rather have some control over the arms trade than no control, specifically when it comes to software and algorithms and apps? And so
And
that's
this is a great segue for Wellesley's comment, which is that this is a, as you used the term before, this is a weapon. Ron, how can you the comparison is not to a newspaper or even to the BBC or
or to
RT.
RT
It's a weapon. They're
or a
shooting
website.
they're shooting video beams at us.
I don't know about that, but they certainly are collecting your heart rate, your eyes, where they go on the screen. They are controlling and manipulating whole groups of individuals, just like Facebook did. But the difference is we can control Facebook. Congress can call in Facebook and hold the leaders of Facebook to account. They can be fined, they can be sanctioned, they can get in trouble. Their business operations can be shut down. What do you do when TikTok, or what is it, Dance Bite, decides to do the same thing? Bite Dance. You can't do anything. And that right there is the problem. It's foreign control versus national control and enforcement.
And there's a perfect segue to Jefferson Super Chat. If the needle is to be threaded on foreign control, then how much do we have to worry about a creeping definition of control? Do tax breaks count? Yeah, that's a lawyer's dream / nightmare, depending on whether you're getting paid or whether your client is in trouble over it.
Ask FinCEN. By the way, everybody, you now need to comply because the Court of Appeals decided to overturn the injunction on the requirement that you disclose to FinCEN, to the U.S. government, all beneficial owners. Who the hell is a beneficial owner? Is it somebody who benefits, who donated to you? Like, is it your Uncle Tom? Is it who is a beneficial owner? Who do I need to spy on and give updates to the US government, their address, their names, and everything else connected to my small business? These are questions that need to be addressed right now, but it's in the form of financial regulations. So here we are worried about freaking TikTok, which I understand. It's 150 million users here in the United States. So 1/3 of the population utilizes TikTok. Not 1/3 of the population owns a business. Right. So I can kind of understand why people aren't freaking out about this new rule that was just implemented. But my question is why are we not freaking out about it? If we are deciding, okay, we can't control TikTok, we shouldn't ban TikTok, then I'm in the position to say we shouldn't be controlling who transfers money to who and where. I don't care if you're transferring it to your brother Ahmed who lives in Syria. I don't care
So
if he's
Danny, do you
friends with
realize
Hamas.
what this is?
What?
We are talking about here.
Is money not free speech? Because I thought that the Supreme Court said it was. So
Right.
you're sitting here saying that you're going to control what I have access to, who I communicate with, but you can't have control of what I have access to on my phone in this app. You can't control that because that's a violation of free speech, but you can control who I send money to. That's absurd. That is the ultimate absurdity. Do you agree or disagree, Ron?
I agree, and what we're really talking about here, the
I got all
singularity.
upset. I'm sorry. I got all upset. I apologize.
You did?
Yeah, that was my
Are
little
you pink?
pregnancy
Are you
flare.
pink?
A little bit upset.
You
I'm
only pink,
upset.
aren't
Look,
you?
I'm getting a justice rash. I'm
Yeah,
really
that's what I
upset.
think. That's what I thought I know. This is the singularity. Now add crypto.
Yes.
Ideas, images, videos, transactions are all represented by data. These are data weapons. Money are data weapons. Money only exists, Oh, that is a lot of justice now. This girl is
I am really pissed. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's so upsetting when these constitutional principles only apply to corporate interests and never to the individual, when it so obviously applies to the individual, when our founding fathers drafted the Constitution with the individual citizen in mind, not just corporations. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. If you're going to sit here and say we can't ban TikTok, well, then guess what? You should not, as a government, be able to access where you shouldn't even be looking at my bank account, first of all, let alone be able to flag my transactions and prevent me from sending money to whoever I want for whatever reason. I should not have to ask permission from a bank to have access to my own funds. It is insane and it is absurd. That is not how the relationship with the government works. They should be asking for our permission to use our funds, which they so often do not. And they've created a million loopholes to avoid ever having to be held accountable by the taxpayer. But they want you to be accountable for every single dime you spend or receive on Cash App, Venmo, on every single transaction that you have. We are taxed to death. We are subjugated. We are spied on. And you want me to sit here and feel bad for a foreign entity who's having to go through the same hell that every single US citizen has for the last 50 years? Honey, you ain't getting sympathy from me. Okay, you all sat there with your eyes closed and your ears covered. Nah, 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 it doesn't matter. But terrorism, nah, 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 security, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to pay for international money laundering. I don't want to pay for international child trafficking. Oh, you don't? You don't? What do you think? Okay, tell me this, Ron. Do you think after the Epstein disclosures, after the AG, and I hate to bring it back to Epstein, but this is just such a clear violation of the law and just such a clear weaponized incompetence of the United States government. It is corruption at its finest. Do you know what happened in that case, Ron? The AG sued Chase Bank because Chase Bank not only did they set up a bunch of entities for Jeffrey Epstein to launder money through, they financed him. They gave him loans to continue. The SEO of Chase Bank was buying and selling women from Jeffrey Epstein, allegedly. Not allegedly. They came to a settlement. It's settled. The SEC, they got fines for it, and they weren't reporting on Jeffrey Epstein. They weren't reporting on any of these shell companies. And now by the way, the shell companies are the entire excuse for the implementation of this new FinCEN rule, is to shut down on these empty companies that are just used in foreign money laundering and money transactions so that the US government can't spy on people's individual transactions. It all goes full circle. I just wish that there was equal treatment and protection and enforcement of the law. Is that too much to ask for, Ron?
No, it's not.
Okay.
But I can tell you this, you're not going to get it. As much as you and I are entitled to argue for it and to advocate for it, but we see that the courts are part of the problem. They have been for a very long time. We could just talk about the shadow docket in the Southern District of New York.
The existence of FISA. What is that? What is that, Ron? You're not allowed to keep any secrets from the government, but the government is allowed to keep every secret from you.
Including secrets about you.
About you? Oh, trust me. I get pulled over and put into a separate line by the TSA every single flight I have ever taken, foreign and domestic. Every single one. I don't have a mark. I don't know if I'm on a no-fly list. I suspect that I am. I don't know who I pissed off, but I apparently pissed off somebody. And that's little old me. If that's happening to little old me, think about who else is happening to. We know that it happened to who's soon to be the head of DNI, which I am so excited for. Oh my goodness. I absolutely love. What is her name? She's phenomenal. Tulsi Gabbard. They did the same thing to Tulsi Gabbard. They put her on a no-fly list, and now she's the head of director of national intelligence. Oh, mwah, 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 mwah. Sweetest justice. But this is terrifying. This is truly terrifying, Ron. This should terrify you. If there is no justice for FISA defendants, if there is no justice for people who are parts of these shadow courts, then that means there is no justice. Period. It doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist for everyone equally and fairly under the law, it doesn't exist for anyone.
She's right.
Thank you, Ron. That just made my night. That made my year. That's all I needed to hear at the end of 2024.
You're 100% right. So now let me flip it on you.
Flip it.
Why the hell can the government tell me that I can't have TikTok on my phone? I want TikTok. In your hands-off regime, I'm Ron Coleman. I've got an IQ of 1,000,000. Okay, I'm not gonna. By the way, the high IQ guys, they're always sucked in by this crap. But okay, I'm not gonna get sucked. I mean, look. Generally speaking, in terms of the data collection stuff, first of all, as the squarest man in America, I have no data. I have no money, and I have no data. I'm completely. I have no trouble
Ron, do you want to say you have no money one more time?
I mean, of course, I control the international money supply, but I personally, my share of it at the moment is, it leaves a little bit to be desired. But the
Just
in
let's
our
go out of the
libertarian
anti-Semitism, please.
fantasy world, right?
Oh my goodness.
I'm willing. Listen, I'm willing to pay the price of parting with my privacy so
Okay.
that I can get incredible TikTok tips about the worst place to sit on an airplane, and why Israel is the worst Nazis in the world, and all the great thoughts and the latest dances and the challenges, whatever they have on TikTok. Why should the government be allowed to stop me?
Well, because the government has an interest in protecting the good of the people and protecting the
Oh,
public.
the good of the people. So, in other words, like to protect us against money laundering and human trafficking and
And
all.
drugs, and guess what? You don't have you don't have the right to purchase or hold or obtain
Okay,
whatever you want, Ron.
so now the good of the people. Okay, the good of the people means that they need to also know if we're making deposits of more than $10,000.
Exactly.
These are
And
hard
I
questions.
see how this goes, and that's the issue. I'm just saying if we're gonna live in this world and we're going to follow the law, and I'm not advocating for the destruction of TikTok, okay? I am advocating for the sale of TikTok. I do think that TikTok should be sold by or should be owned by a national, okay? National corporation, something that we can get our hands on, something we can deal with if needed, if necessary. Okay. I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with people owning TikTok, choosing to use TikTok, downloading TikTok on their phone. That's not the problem. I don't have a problem with people deciding to look at whatever they want. As a huge free speech advocate, okay, I am completely comfortable with you using your money how you want, spending your money how you want, where you want, okay, and not having the government look at all those things. And also saying that this foreign company is not protected under the Constitution like a national company would be. And in that case, if national company, then constitutional protections.
What I think has to happen is that the court, because it is taking up the issue, has to establish a test. Now, one of the well-known problems in constitutional law of the last several generations is the promulgation of multi-part tests. Instead of judges ruling on things, saying that's not what the Constitution says,
which is all they should do.
Which is all they should do.
That's all they should do.
And if everything warrants a 150-page opinion with four concurrences and 3 dissents and 5,000 footnotes, they could write 10 or 15-page decisions for the hard ones, and maybe they would actually be able to hear more than 7 or 8 cases a year and stop leaving open all these glaring crappy court of appeals opinions and circuit splits, which they just don't seem to give a crap about because they're so busy they have to take the whole summer off every year. Okay, different topic. They're going to have to establish, let's just call it a standard. Let's not use the word test. Let's not dare them. A standard. When, going back to my point about the singularity, when do we say that a technology or an activity is not that takes the form of a communicative activity?
Mm-hmm.
Is not but is in fact a weapon? And are there things does it have to be a weapon in order for us to make it illegal, or can it just be merely by virtue of being foreign? I'm gonna give you that one. By virtue of being foreign, do we say it doesn't have to be a weapon? Because weapons, if it were really a weapon, we would really be saying there has to be a declaration of war, because it's an act of war to fire a weapon at our country, but it could be deleterious. It could be harmful to the national interest. From the beginning of the Bolshevik Revolution through the present, security services in the KGB and its successor have been actively involved in subverting American institutions and interests through all kinds of media,